two men that do an amazing job with college basketball is Tom Casale over at Action Network, coupled with Justin Perri over at Shot Quality Bets. Gentlemen, it's always great to have you aboard, and when it comes to the Sweet 16, these are the biggest of the big games when it comes to college basketball. And with that, we get more offerings. And I'll go to you on this one first, Tom. With having more player props, with having more options to bet college basketball, do you take a look at a lot of these avenues, or do you keep it relatively simple with regards to your bets this time of year, just what you've been taking a look at much throughout the season?
Yeah, someone like me, Greg, I don't bet the volume you do. So I have more trouble finding plays at this time of the season because the lines are so tight, in my opinion. So I do actually play more player props, more team totals than I would in the regular season because during the regular season, I mean, I'm sure you guys do the same thing. On Monday, I mean, I have my eyes on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. I mean, I'm going through the week finding spots to pick and that's kind of when I'm really rolling. Now you're starting to limit the games. You're limiting the matchups. I mean, you look at these lines this week. There's not much value anywhere that I see. So yes, I do like to hit the player props. I particularly like to play player props with anybody playing Gonzaga. That seems to work out well. So maybe a UCLA player prop this week.
Yep, I don't blame you there. And with Gonzaga, certainly the defense has been a little bit shaky in the past, and their offense, it always has been a bulldozer. And same question for you, Justin. You guys over there at Chalk Quality Bets do a great job and have been all season long. But do you guys step into the player prop market a little bit more, or is it a little bit more team-oriented with you?
Bets, really looking into a lot of the spreads and totals. Personally, stay in my lane, which is again mostly spreads, a little bit of totals here and there. If I find a model is really clicking and getting me a good edge for a period of time, or there's a good trend on a team. But in general, I try to view the games, even though they're the entertainment value is sky high. The betting value, they are kind of viewed, in my personal opinion, as an extension of the regular season. Not very much difference, not putting more money on anything, just trying to approach things with the level head that I think allows you to stay in the game. But at the same time, I definitely think there are places that when you are so keyed in on these last 16 teams that you can find a way to play player props, just not what I end up spending my time. I'm not trying to go against them or say it's not worth it. There's definitely an edge in those markets if you know what you're looking for. We at Shot Quality aren't really taking the time to look into individual player statistics, but hey, you never know. It could be on the horizon.
Absolutely. And Justin, I'm right there with you because it's something that I do want to take a look at a lot more. Something I haven't necessarily perfected, but I do think that there is a lot of value there. And sort of wish that they were offered a little bit more during the season as well. So that way you're not trying to dive in when it comes to the biggest of the big games where the bookmakers, they are certainly spending a lot more time taking a look at these player props than they would in, say, some insert your mid-major conference game here in the middle of January they would be doing over there. And Tom, when it comes to these teams that are remaining as well, do you take a little bit of a different approach when it comes to handicapping the teams, taking a little bit more of a look at recent form as well? Because I do think that it's just such an intriguing time of year, and we've been seeing it with a lot of these teams that they are sort of Cinderellas. They are able to snowball a lot of momentum, and we've got a 15 seed here in the Sweet 16, and last two 15 seeds that have made the Sweet 16, they've been able to get a cover in the Sweet 16.
Yeah, I think you always have to reevaluate and look at the matchups. One thing I find, just from my handicapping, is a lot of the metrics I use during the regular season may not apply here. For example, Michigan State on paper doesn't turn the ball over very much, but the Big Ten doesn't really have aggressive ball pressuring defenses. They're going to play a Kansas State team that's really going to get after them and try to force turnovers. So I think, matchups like that are interesting because you're just looking at teams that play different styles from different conferences. And as far as Princeton goes, to me, and we've seen this, guys, throughout the tournament, the underdog has to stay close, and then the crowd gets into it. The favorites start to feel that pressure. I think if Creighton gets out to a lead there, they're in pretty good shape. But if it's close at halftime, then I think you have some trouble there for Creighton. I do think, though, just looking at what Princeton has done, not taking nothing away from them. I didn't think they played that great against Arizona, and for whatever reason, whatever you think of Missouri, they didn't get off the bus. That's not the Missouri team we've seen all season. I don't know what was wrong with them, but they just did not play with their hair on fire like they usually do. So I think Creighton gets them here.
And with that, Tom, as well, would this be perhaps a game that you'd be looking to live bet a little bit more? Because if Creighton gets off to that big lead, they could just, for lack of a better term, bury the slipper. They can just make it so that way Cinderella, it is actually going to be striking midnight on them. Whereas at the same time, if Princeton is able to get off to a good start, they can sort of manifest that momentum that they build early on in a game and keep that going for the entire 40 minutes.
Yeah, I actually live bet more in the tournament than I do in the regular season. A perfect example is I had Duke in a small money line parlay just for fun. And in the first 5 minutes of that game, I said, this is good night, baby. I mean, I could see where it was going. You had a physical Tennessee team who was knocking them around. So the second Duke got up by 6, I ran to hit live bet Tennessee. I just thought they were gonna physically dominate that game. So yeah, I think that's the one thing, when you're giving out picks and stuff. A lot of times you can live bet and get out of something you don't like after the game starts, and I think it's very valuable in the tournament when these matchups are so tight.
And is that something that you entertain a little bit more during the tournament as well, Justin? Because I know that you guys over there at Shot Quality Bets have been working much more when it comes to taking a look at the actual shot quality score during a game. I know that that's something that you guys have been working on a lot more recently, and I do find it to be very interesting because I really don't do a lot of live betting myself, but there are certain times during a game where I'm like, man, this team is getting a whole bunch of good looks. They just aren't falling. Meanwhile, Team X is 10 of 13 from 3, and like 9 of those shots probably shouldn't have went.
Right. Yeah. I mean, is something we are definitely working on right now at Shot Quality. I had a fun live bet experience tonight. I took EKY plus 15.5, and I just got to close my eyes and watch that one come home on an insane run for them. So that was pretty fun. But yeah, we are working on something actually right now. People who are currently subscribed to Shot Quality Bets actually got an email tonight asking them to sign up for our first test of our new live text system. We are texting out the halftime scores for both NBA and NCAA games this weekend. So we're really excited about that, just to kind of show you teams that are maybe overperforming or underperforming against their real scores. And it's been pretty successful. We had some good attempts on some overs and unders coming in. We had a good one with Gonzaga, expected to be winning their most recent game, but we're down at the half and of course ended up getting it done. It's been pretty successful because it really does show you who is generating better offense and who is maybe getting lucky, who's underperforming and overperforming. And I think that's just a really good data point to have from a shot creation basis. It's up to you, of course, how you use it. Maybe you're like, oh, this team's outperforming. They're hitting everything today. They're going to stay hot. Or maybe you feel like something's going to regress towards the norm. It's just, another data point instead of just what you're seeing on a scoreboard, which can really skew your perspective as you check out lines.
And to your point on that Eastern Kentucky game, I mean, my goodness, that team had went to overtime in 3 straight games, including double overtime the game before, and then they just buried 3 after 3 after 3. If you laid between 5 and 5.5 and or had the under, which I laid 4.5, I had the under, that was not necessarily the most savory of experiences in a game which that game couldn't have had more than 60 possessions in it. There's no way it could have.
Honestly. Yeah, it really felt like, that game kind of got shipped in the first half, and you get these big comebacks when it's still out of reach. Even though that crazy run happened, you could say that Eastern Kentucky kind of never sniffed it, right? So interesting scenario. A lot kind of happens with motivation and a game being done and trying to, get the right read on games in these do or die games, scenarios, whatever you want to call them.
Well, you certainly got some nice stat boosters for the guys on Eastern Kentucky, that is for sure. If they're going to be hitting the transfer portal or something like that, they've got some great tape out there, and we've got some great tape on these teams. They're going to be going at it on Thursday, and coming up next with Tom Casale of Action Network and Justin Perri of Shot Quality Bets, let's dive into the games that we're going to be seeing at MSG here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Back here with Tom Casale, who does great work at Action Network. Likewise for Justin Perri over at Shot Quality Bets. And Justin, I know that there's a play that you very much do like on the board for Thursday, and it's a late game out at MSG. Tennessee versus Florida Atlantic. Tennessee opens up a 4.5-point favorite. They're now a 5.5-point favorite. With this total dropping, take me through this game, because with Tennessee, they certainly aren't as well-rounded on the offensive end as Florida Atlantic, but this Tennessee team, number one in the country in terms of points allowed on a per-possession basis. Florida Atlantic very much relies upon the three, and guess what? Tennessee is also number one in three-point shooting defense.
Yeah, this is a really good spot for Tennessee, in my opinion, against the market. 4.5, 5.5, where it is now. I mean, I had this all the way at 9. Shot quality is going to make this one closer to 12. We see it as a really interesting spot for Tennessee to kind of get into the mud a little bit here and slow down what FAU is going to try to do. They are the best defensive team remaining, in my estimation. Shot quality is going to say second best, but of course that has Jalen Clark's impact in on what UCLA has done for the entire season, and separated by about 1/100th of a shot quality point per possession. So I'm going to go ahead and say Tennessee's the best defense remaining in the tournament. I think they really shut this FAU team down. Not trying to say FAU hasn't done a spectacular job representing their conference themselves, but this is just a little bit different than what they've seen. The Memphis game, Kendrick Davis getting a little injured in the key period of that game. Of course, FDU isn't really going to put up the same challenge. I think people have been sleeping on this Tennessee team the entire tournament. They were made the underdog against Duke. They completely got that one done. People thought they were going to be losing to ULL, and they had that game, in range to cover for a while. Didn't get that done, but I think they woke up a little bit. Vescovy is on the ball on defense and shooting it lights out on offense. I just think they are a tough team to beat right now. They do everything well on defense. And, we have them winning this at around 83%, our second highest expectation at shot quality to take home the tournament at 18% chance to win this thing. So Tennessee definitely still being slept on and a lot of value.
And I do think that this is such an interesting chess match, because Florida Atlantic, they do have the better offense, but they are an offense that relies upon threes. Tom, how do you view this game? Just because when it comes to Florida Atlantic, like I said, I do think that they're the more well-rounded team, but that one strength of Tennessee, I do think that it's a very big one come March and in a tournament setting like this.
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't a huge Tennessee fan all season, but when the brackets came out, I tweeted out when March Madness starts, you got to readjust your thinking, right? You can't the things you thought 2 months ago. Now it depends on the brackets, and I thought that Tennessee kind of had a nice road to get out of the East once I saw the brackets, and they beat Duke up pretty good. Purdue got beat. The only thing that scares me a little bit is this: if you look at the team Tennessee had trouble with, it was Missouri. And Missouri kind of plays a little bit like FAU does. They're a little smaller. They shoot threes. They're all over the place. They want to get in transition. If FAU is going to win this game, that's what they got to do. They got to kind of take a page out of Missouri's book. Missouri scored like 86 and 79 points against Tennessee, and that was because they weren't letting them set up in that half-court defense. Duke saw you have Tennessee get set up in that half-court defense, and they'll put the vice grip on you. So I think FAU's path to victory is trying to get some easy buckets in transition and getting Tennessee a little bit out of whack. But I think it's too much Tennessee. I think they're too big. They're too strong, and they end up winning this game.
And let me give you guys just a little bit of what I've gathered in this as well, because the game is going to be played at MSG, and I don't know if it's just me and maybe the games that I see, but is it just me, or does every single college basketball team that plays at MSG forget how to shoot? I mean, I'll throw this to you, Justin, but I've noticed this like every single time. It's with the Big East tournament. It's always with that Jimmy V Classic. Every time college basketball teams go to MSG, it turns into a brick fest.
It's been historically pretty relevant, honestly. I saw some stats on it tonight. I'm hoping I will be at these games tomorrow, actually, at the Garden, so that'll be a good time. Just waiting for people to sell their tickets. Prices have been steadily falling since it's not Duke and Kentucky, but I'll go anyway. I don't care. I want to see anyone. But I do think that this has been a brick fest at MSG. It kind of always happens. I've heard things from the balls being too inflated, which I don't really know how I believe, but a lot of just, honestly, the acoustics in that arena are incredible. It feels like the people are right on top of you. It gets really loud. I don't know. I think that this is just maybe a little bit of just good defense translating. To Tom's point, FAU runs a lot of transitions, so I think that's kind of going to be the X factor here. I think that this game does have a really good shot to go over. I did play the over, so going a little bit bold here, got 130.5. I think we're going to see a lot of layups, so hopefully not too much jump shooting from these teams. Tennessee does take away those threes pretty effectively, and I think FAU is going to try to push it for layups, and that's going to be their best shot. I mean, even though Tennessee defends the rim well, if they have trouble shooting on the rims on top of Tennessee's defense, it could be a long night for the Owls.
It certainly could be, and I do think that it's going to be so interesting to take a look at this game. And then the other game out at MSG, I think, is a fascination as well. Kansas State versus Michigan State. I mean, you don't need me to give you the analysis of who the more experienced and who has the coaching advantage in this game. With Michigan State, they're a 1.5 favorite, but I'm actually going to go against Tom Izzo in this one. I do like Kansas State, and Tom, I know that you were talking a little bit about Michigan State having not played against a defense quite like Kansas State. Is that a reason why you might be willing to take Kansas State, or are you going to trust in Tom Izzo in this spot? Because I do think that you've got good angles when it comes to both of these teams. I just trust a little bit more in the top-end talent itself of Kansas State.
Yeah, you're talking to the only guy who's betting the other coach. Jerome Tang's my favorite coach in college basketball. I think he's a young star. Listen, Izzo is great, right? He's got his team back in the Sweet 16. And listen, they played 2 good games. They didn't, they didn't back in here. Michigan State's playing well, and I think Kansas State has played 2 good games. I had Kentucky against Kansas State, and turnovers, and they didn't shoot well from the, but that was a pretty good game. I mean, Kansas State just played a little bit better down the stretch. This is my own. I think Kansas State's the better team, and I think the better team's getting points. That's where I am on this game, and I do think they present some challenges defensively. I mean, Michigan State's shooting the ball well. I think it's going to be a very competitive game. The one thing about Michigan State, though, some of these teams, like Texas and UCLA, they might not be the fastest teams in the country, but they don't mind running. Michigan State's kind of like that. If you speed up the tempo, they don't mind getting up and down the court. I think Kansas State's going to speed up the tempo on them. Let's see how Michigan State reacts to that. This is a very competitive game, but if Kansas State was a 3-point favorite, maybe I would go the other way, but getting 1.5, 2 points, I'll take the Wildcats.
I agree. I made the Kansas State Wildcats personally my favorite in this game. Justin, how do you view this one? Because I think that there's a lot of ways that you're able to take a look at it. If you take a look at the sheer numbers itself, I personally think it leans a little bit more to Kansas State, but that coaching advantage, it certainly is with Michigan State at the very least if you're looking at experience.
Yeah, this is one where I'm going to be against you guys tomorrow, so we probably should have just linked up and talked about it earlier. But no, I do think Michigan State could have a little bit of an advantage here. I think the inexperience for this team in Kansas State, it could cause problems, especially at MSG, especially when it's going to be a coaching battle down to the end. I think the line is pretty spot on here, but, the matchups, I just tend to think there might be a way for, Marquise Noel to get shut down a little bit. There's going to be a lot of game planning around his ability to make ridiculous shots. I think we saw a little bit in that last Kansas State game that they kind of got here based on some of those crazy looks. I remember I was in a little bit of disbelief when they were knocking down all those big shots against Kentucky, and we had them losing that game on expected score by 5 points. A score of 80-75 was expected instead of 75-69. And we also had them losing the Montana State game on shot quality by 1 point. So, we are looking for a spot here that I think Kansas State could easily underperform based on what people have seen versus what they're developing. So, yeah, I'll take Michigan State, who has consistently won and deservedly beat Marquette.
And by the way, I absolutely love it when we sort of go mano a mano on these picks as well, because it'd be really boring in life in general if everyone just agreed with everyone. There wouldn't be any reason to bet because everyone would be in agreement, but what we can all agree upon is that Tom Casale of Action Network and Justin Perri of Shot Quality Bets do amazing work, and let's take a look at the games out in Las Vegas next, right here on the Greg Peterson Experience on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Being rejoined by Tom Casale, who does great work at Action Network, and a man that does great work over at Shot Quality Bets. Justin Perri. And Justin, we'll throw at you the early game that's going to be going down here in lovely Las Vegas, Arkansas and UConn. UConn was a 3.5-point favorite about 24 hours ago. This went back to the opener of 4. Total on this game is between 139.5 and 140. And I want to get your thoughts on this game because Arkansas has one advantage in this game for sure, and that would be the coaching advantage. I think that's really hard to go up against what Eric Musselman has been able to do the last few Marches. It has been very impressive. I take a look across the board past that, and I think that UConn has a lot of edges here. I'm not sure how you view this game, but even with Musselman being on the sidelines of Arkansas, I just can't go against this UConn team because I feel like other than that bad stretch that they've had in January, one of the best teams in all of college basketball for my money.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think this is a really interesting matchup here. Of course, Coach Muss looking, is it going to be 3 straight Elite Eights if he gets this one done? So awesome stuff there that he's been able to do. Shirt fully coming off, well-deserved. The man is a monster with these coaching advantages. I think he will again have the advantage if it comes down to a close game. I like him to at least keep it close enough for that cover. I did take the +4 myself. I mean, look, but it's going to come down to a couple key factors for me. UConn runs a lot of off-screen offense, 11th in frequency at doing that. Arkansas top 80 in defending that type of action. UConn's going to make a lot of cutting plays. Arkansas a little bit in the middle at defending that, but at the rim is really where I see this game being won or lost. UConn 38th in shot quality offensively at the rim. Arkansas 51st defending it, and then Arkansas 22nd at the rim, going to the rim, the 40 most frequent in all of D1, but UConn 16th best at defending it. So whoever ends up winning that rim battle, to me, is going to be the one to win this game. Is going to come down to every single possession, rebounds, offensive putbacks. Everything under the rim is going to be what you want to watch for. If one team looks to be dominating it early, I think we'll know who's the winner going to be.
I do think that this game is a fascination with Arkansas. I mean, they got a lot out of Kamani Johnson in that game against Kansas as well. We shall see if he's going to be able to help out down low because that is my biggest fear with them. UConn has just been pounding the glass all season long. Arkansas does not boast a guy that has north of 5.5 rebounds per game. So that is certainly something I'm taking a look at. And Tom, I know that when it comes to Friday, you're taking a look at this Texas versus Xavier game. Xavier is currently between a 4 to 4.5 point underdog. Total on this game is 149. And we were talking a little bit earlier about going away from more of the traditional sides and totals. And this isn't like a completely off the radar bet, but I know that you've got something that isn't necessarily the traditional full game side / total for this game.
Yeah, this is the game I think I'm most looking forward to just watching is Texas and Xavier. I think it's very fascinating. Xavier's one of those teams. They were down in the first round at Kennesaw, and they needed a great defensive block to even be here. But sometimes you get a team like that gets out of that game and starts to play well. Texas is top 100 in pace. We know Xavier's going to play fast. I think this is going to be a fast game back and forth. Texas doesn't mind running with their athletes. And I think Xavier will give them a little trouble with the way they shoot the ball. I took the Xavier team total over 72.5 here. I think this game is going to be played in the 70s, low 80s. I thought there was some value with that number. I think Texas moves on here, but I think this is going to be a heck of a game. I'm glad it's one of the game that kind of closes out the Sweet 16 because I think it's going to be like that TCU Gonzaga game where it's real entertaining and back and forth.
And I know that this is a game that you're going to be on as well, Tom, but I will throw it at you first, Justin. San Diego State versus Alabama, and I have a feeling this might be a family play as San Diego State open up in a lot of spots, right around about a 5.5 to a 6-point underdog. This is all the way up to 7.5 right now, and total on this game has come down to about 137, 137.5. Actually opened up closer to 6.5, so don't want to amend that, but that said, Justin, looks like you're going to be on the underdog in this ordeal.
Oh, yeah, I'm going to be on the underdog. I think this is going to be a really interesting spot for San Diego State, and I'll tell you why. I just think that they have some of the tools to keep up with this Alabama team that maybe people aren't super aware of. This is a really, really deep team for San Diego State. They're going to run like 9 guys out there. None of them play like 40 minutes or anything. They're just going to keep hitting you with defensive and offensive intensity. People probably remember a lot of like these old San Diego State teams that were like these defensive just monsters slowing it down. They still have those defensive tendencies, especially at the rim, but they can still keep up with you on offense. I've heard a lot about it just being the Matt Bradley show. They do have other options, and Matt Bradley is still going to give it to you. I love it. I think, you were able to touch stuff at 8. I grabbed 7 and a little bit of 8 as well. But I really like this play. I also really think the over has some legs as well. Alabama, really can't be slowed down, but they're going to let teams kind of speed up with them. I don't think that anyone has a chance to slow them down, so I'm definitely playing the over on this one. I don't think there's been a total this low on an Alabama game in quite some time. So 135.5 is where I got that one. It's a pretty big compliment to what the Aztecs do, but this one should get to 140.
Yeah, I am with you as well. I do think that, especially if we can get some late game fouling, if this is a 5-6 point game with a minute remaining, we all know what that means, fouls. And Tom, I know you're taking a look at this game as well. Take me through San Diego State versus Alabama, because I can tell you right now, I side with Justin on this one, and I think that you're leaning the same way.
Yeah, I agree with Justin. I think when I saw the brackets, I thought, if San Diego State can win that first game, because to kind of have that mental block, right, where they get in the tournament and lose, I thought they would be dangerous, because I think they match up with Alabama better than anybody in that region, and one of the best in the entire tournament. You're looking at two of the best 3-point defenses. The only difference is San Diego State doesn't shoot threes. Alabama shoots the 8th most threes per game, and if you look at their 5 losses, they shot 30.7% from 3. I think if San Diego State can keep them at about 30%, they got a shot not only to cover but to win. As Justin said, they're deep, they're experienced, they're long, they're athletic. I know people might not have seen them a lot because they play on the West Coast, but just matchup-wise on paper, I like this matchup for San Diego State. Now, maybe they shoot 28% from the field. They've done that before. Maybe Alabama can't miss from 3. They've done that before. There's certain variables where the game is an easy cover for Alabama. But I think if you play this game out, a lot of times San Diego State is going to keep this game within the number.
I think so as well. I do like San Diego State in this spot, and I don't know about you, and I'll throw this back at you, Tom. With San Diego State, they were playing a little bit faster during the beginning of the season, and I honestly think that bodes better for them now, because they're used to playing a little bit more of an up-tempo style. San Diego State is typically built around good defense, playing very, very slowly, and I do think that the way that they played more up-tempo in Maui is actually going to serve them well in this circumstance.
Yeah, I agree. Those were kind of the games I was thinking about and how they could adapt to Alabama. You mentioned in the past they were kind of that slow, defensive Virginia kind of team, right? Where they got to win by defense. But I think they can score too. With as Justin said, they got more than just one player. This is a fascinating game. I think this is one of those. If Alabama wins this game, maybe they win it all, because this is going to be really one of their toughest tests.
Yep, I totally agree with you there. And Justin, we've got about 90 seconds here. What other Sweet 16 game, whether it be for Thursday or for Friday, are you really primed up for and perhaps see a little bit of an edge on?
Yeah, a couple different games. I have a lot of bets out. I'm going to be taking the over on the Gonzaga game with UCLA. I think we're going to see a good amount of scoring there. Gonzaga isn't really in the mood to stop anyone, and I think UCLA's defense is a little bit weakened. 145.5 seems a bit low for me. Taking the under on the Houston game, laying it with Houston. I do play a lot of the volume. I'm always willing to make a couple bets and trust my analytics and what we have at Shot Quality. Should be a very fun week. But one last point on that Alabama game, guys. Alabama expected to be letting opponents shoot a lot better from 3. They have notoriously allowed just 28% against them in shooting from deep. That should be closer to a lot like 33%. So if you evaluate Alabama on what should be happening and the shots they let up, you might have a little bit of a different perspective on the Aztecs, and that's why Shot Quality is going to make this just a 3-point game. So that should tell you how much we like San Diego State, but it should be a fun weekend and excited to bet through the whole thing.
Great point on that, Justin, because SEC 3-point shooting this year, not terrific. The duo of Tom Casale and Justin Perri, absolutely amazing. Gentlemen, always great to have you aboard. Thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.